I was 30 for the Thanksgiving my whole family let my table go cold. I had set 8 places. Pressed linen. Handwritten name cards. My mother's good gravy boat, with the matching one I bought just to feel close to her. My parents never came. My brother sent a text. My sister posted a smiling photo from the dinner she was hosting instead. One by one, the chairs stayed empty while the candles burned down to stubs. So I sat at the head of a table built for a family and ate alone, crying into food no one else would taste. Then my grandfather walked in out of the snow and pressed an old envelope into my hand. I thought being left at that table was the cruelest thing they could do to me. I was wrong. By the time the snow melted, 3 of them would wish I had never opened that envelope. Welcome back to Twisted Family Revenge Stories, where quiet women face loud families and let the truth do the shouting. If a story has ever made you set a boundary you should have set years ago, you're in the right place. Stay with me. This one took me a long time to tell. I had been up since 6 that morning because that is what I do when I'm scared. I cook. I clean. I line things up. I make everything so right no one can find a reason to leave. I'm a CPA in Omaha. November is my season. Dead people's money. Estates. Trusts. Families who are grieving and suddenly need every receipt their mother ever kept. So I know what numbers can do. I know how they can lie. And I know how they can tell the truth louder than any person in the room. That year was the first year I had a house big enough and a paycheck steady enough to host everybody. I wanted it perfect. I told myself it was generosity. It was closer to begging. For 32 years, I had been trying to earn a seat at the Bennett table by being useful. By being excellent. By being the one who never asked for anything and always brought the pie. A perfect Thanksgiving was just the grown-up version of a child sliding a report card across the counter and hoping somebody looked up. I brined the turkey on Tuesday. I ironed the napkins on Wednesday. I wrote each name in my best hand. Even the ones I wasn't sure would come. Hope is stubborn. It always adds one more chair. At 10 that morning, the house smelled like sage and butter and a future I almost believed in. At 10:15, my phone lit up on the counter. The first message came in like the first crack in ice. Small. Sharp. Easy to ignore if you want to lie to yourself. Mason first. Hey. Something came up. Can't make it. Sorry. My brother was 33. He was allergic to the word no and to responsibility in equal measure. Then Claire. Change of plans. We'll do something another time. No apology. Just a clean little cut. I told myself traffic. I told myself flu. I told myself anything but the truth. Then my phone buzzed again. A photo. I wasn't supposed to see it. I had been tagged by mistake in a group nobody had bothered removing me from. It was Claire's dining room. My parents at the table. Mason pouring wine. My niece laughing. A turkey golden and whole on a platter I recognized because I had given it to my mother 3 Christmases before. They were all there. They had just chosen a different table. I called my mother, Helen, with a hand shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. She answered on the 4th ring. I could hear plates. Laughter. Silverware. People I loved having a good time. Eliza, she said, it's a busy day. I asked her, very calmly, why no one had come. There was a pause. The kind where someone decides how honest to be. Then she said, we only set 1 good table this year. And she hung up. Just like that. Because there was gravy to pass. I stood in my kitchen with 8 place settings and 1 beating heart. And in that moment I finally understood the math. They had not forgotten me. Forgetting would have been kinder. They had looked at my invitation. Looked at each other. And decided I was not worth the drive. The candles bent and sputtered. The food cooled in its dishes. And I did the only thing left to do. I sat down at the head of my beautiful empty table. And I ate. You have to understand something. I had been eating alone at that family's table my whole life. Even when every chair was full. I came to the Bennetts when I was 2. That was all I had ever been told. Adopted. Taken in. Given a roof when I might not have had one. It was the kind of family story that gets repeated until it hardens into a wall. My birthdays were remembered late. If at all. I wore Claire's old coats. I was told to be grateful for the warmth. When report cards came home, mine got a nod. Claire's got a celebration. And I learned to read the difference between those two things like a second language. The lesson underneath was always the same. You are lucky to be here. My mother said it out loud once. I was 12. I had asked why I couldn't go to the cousin's lake house. She crouched so we were eye to eye. The way adults do when they want the words to stick. You were a kindness, Eliza, she said. Not a daughter. She meant it gently. That was the worst part. She believed she was being fair. Like she was doing me some favor by telling me exactly where the edge of my place was. I didn't cry. I went to my room. I studied. Because in my small hurt mind, I had already decided something. If I could just be useful enough, perfect enough, needed enough, they would have to keep me. So I made myself into a person no family could afford to lose. It is an exhausting way to live. But there was one person in that house who never once made me earn my chair. And on the worst Thanksgiving of my life, he was about to come through my front door. My grandfather Arthur called me sweetheart. And he never once put a price on the word. He was the one fixed point in a childhood of moving walls. Every autumn when I was little, he set me on a stool in his kitchen and we made spiced pear pie together. His big hands over my little ones. Cardamom. Clove. Pears so ripe they bruised if you looked at them too hard. I still make that pie every year. I had never stopped to ask why I knew the recipe by heart when no one had ever written it down. It just lived in my hands. The way some songs live inside you long after you forget who taught them. Grandpa Arthur was 80 that winter. Or near enough. He had taken a bad fall in September. Back step. First frost. Hard landing. After that, he got quieter. Foggier. More careful with his words. Like a man walking across thin ice and trying to remember where it cracked last time. My mother had stepped in to handle his affairs. That's how she put it. And I had been glad. Honestly glad. I thought someone was looking after him. I didn't ask questions. I was busy being the family's reliable nobody. The helper who showed up for tax season and funerals. Not Christmas. Not birthdays. So when I think back to that Thanksgiving, I think first of the pie cooling on my counter. Untouched. A recipe I could not explain. In a house nobody came to. I didn't know yet that the recipe had never been Grandpa's to pass down. I didn't know whose hands it had really come from. That truth was folded into thirds in his coat pocket. Waiting in the snow. The doorbell rang at 6. Long after the candles had drowned. I almost didn't answer. I thought maybe Claire had come to gloat. Or apologize. And I had no room left for either. But through the glass, I saw a hunched shape covered in white. I opened the door and found my grandfather standing there. No hat. Snow melting in his thin hair. Breathing like the walk from the car had cost him too much. They told me you weren't doing dinner this year, he said. Then he looked past me. At the table. At the cards. At your mother's house, he said, I saw 8 name cards and only 7 chairs full. He had counted. His mind may have been slipping in places. But he counted. And the missing chair had been mine. I got him inside. Into the warm. Into a chair. His hands were trembling. Not just from cold. Eliza, he said, they keep bringing me papers to sign. I sign them. I don't always know what they say anymore. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Soft. Old. Yellowed at the corners. The kind that has been carried a long time. He set it in my palm and closed my fingers over it with both his hands. I should have given you this years ago, he said. Rose made me promise. And I was an old coward who kept the promise to everybody but you. I had no idea who Rose was. The name meant nothing to me. And somehow it meant everything. Like a word from a language you don't remember but your body does. My hands knew before I did. They opened that envelope the way you peel back a bandage. Slow. Careful. Already braced. 3 things slipped into my lap. A photograph. Soft from being handled. A folded letter. The paper gone the color of weak tea. And a document with a state seal on it. Official. Creased into quarters. I opened the document first. Because forms are where I live. A form will tell you the truth, a face won't. It was a birth certificate. The long kind. The original kind. The one made before families get a chance to rewrite the story. My birth date. My weight. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. And on the line marked mother, a name typed in the flat letters of an old machine. Rose Bennett. I stared at it. Not adopted from a stranger. Not taken in out of charity. Not some lost little girl someone had kindly saved. Bennett. The name was already mine before anyone ever decided to lend it to me. The line marked father was blank. The line marked mother was not. I looked up at my grandfather. He was watching me the way you watch somebody step onto thin ice. Hoping it holds. Grandpa, I said, and my voice came out small. Who is Rose? He took a breath so long it seemed to hold 34 years inside it. Rose was my daughter, he said. My youngest. Your mother. The words entered me slowly. Like cold water. Ankles first. Then knees. Then heart. Rose. My mother. Thomas's little sister. The aunt no one had ever mentioned in 32 years of family dinners and photo albums. She was 26, Grandpa said. Black ice on Highway 75. February. You were almost 2. A truck couldn't stop. He swallowed. She was driving home to us. You were asleep in the back. You didn't have a scratch on you. Then he reached for my hand. Turned it over. Traced the lines of my palm with his thumb. You have her hands, he said. Every year I watched you rolled up pie crust and saw Rose standing right there. That recipe was hers, sweetheart. Not mine. I kept teaching it so a piece of her would stay. Even after they scrubbed her name off everything. I sat very still. All my life I had been told I was a kindness. A guest. A girl with no claim. Lucky to be allowed in. And here was a yellowed state paper telling me I had been a Bennett before I took my first breath. Not taken in. Brought home. The grief and the fury arrived together. Twins. Holding hands. But what Grandpa said next turned grief into something colder. Sharper. Something I could use. Why? I asked. Why would they hide this from me? Grandpa's jaw worked like the answer tasted bad. After Rose died, somebody had to raise you, he said. I was already too old. Thomas was her brother. Natural choice. But Helen had just lost a baby that winter. Her third. The house was tight. Money was tighter. And then here came a child that wasn't hers wearing a dead girl's face. He looked down. She agreed to raise you on one condition. That nobody ever told you whose you really were. She didn't want a ghost at her table. She wanted you grateful. Not connected. He shut his eyes for a second. And Thomas? God help him. He wanted peace more than he wanted to do right by his sister's child. So they made you a story instead of a daughter. Everything slid into place. The late birthdays. The old coats. The careful reminders that I was lucky. It had never been random. It had been maintenance. They had spent 32 years keeping that wall strong because on the other side of it was the truth. And the truth would have made me one of them by blood. A daughter can ask questions. A daughter can expect things. A kindness can only say thank you. I looked at my mother's name on that birth certificate and felt the last childish hope leave my body. They were never going to choose me. They had decided that before I could walk. The only question left was what I would do with the truth now that I had it. I opened the letter last. Some doors you only open when you are ready to walk through them. The handwriting was young. Looping. Sure. The way people write before life teaches them what can be taken. My dear Eliza, it began. And I had to stop and breathe. No one in that family had ever started a sentence to me with the word dear. She wrote it before she died. A night she couldn't sleep. The way new mothers sometimes can't. She wrote about my fists. How I grabbed her finger and would not let go. She wrote that I had a stubborn chin and she hoped I used it well. She wrote that she was scared. A single mother at 25. No ring. A family that loved her and judged her in the same breath. And then she wrote one sentence that changed me forever. Whatever happens, please make sure she knows she was never a burden to me. She was the best thing I ever did. I pressed the paper to the table and stared. I heard myself in her words. My dry jokes. My rhythm. My sharp little turns of phrase when I'm nervous. For 34 years I had wondered why I never fit the Bennett mold. Why I was all edges and quiet stubbornness in a family of soft smiling liars. Now I knew. I wasn't a poor copy of them. I was a faithful copy of her. And she had asked them for one thing. 1. Do right by me. I looked at that letter and thought, for the first time very clearly. Has anybody in this family ever done right by me at all? Grandpa shifted in his chair. The present came crowding back over him. The fog rolling in over that one clear place he had fought to reach. There's something else, he said. Something I need help with. You're the only one I trust with numbers. Since the fall, he told me, my mother had taken over everything. The mail went to her house now. The bank statements stopped coming. He signed what she put in front of him because his hand still knew how, even when his mind didn't always. My accounts feel lighter, he said. I can't explain it better than that. Like a coat with the lining torn out. Then he looked at me. And last week Thomas asked me to sign a paper about the house. My house. Rose's house. Something inside me went still. Then awake. It is a very specific feeling. The one I get when a client slides a shoebox of receipts across my desk and I can smell fraud before I open the lid. I am very good at one thing. Reading what money has been doing when nobody was watching. I did not accuse anybody. I did not promise revenge. He had had enough loud people in his life. I just took his cold hands in mine and said, Grandpa, will you let me look? Just look at the statements. The papers. All of it. Relief moved across his face like spring. I was hoping you'd ask, he said. And just like that, my grief had a job. Here's what people like my mother never understand about people like me. They fight with shame. With volume. With seating charts. With who gets invited and who eats alone. They win by making you feel small in front of people you wanted to love you. I don't fight that way. I never learned how. And after a while, I stopped wanting to. My whole childhood taught me how useless a raised voice is against a family that has already decided who you are. So I put my trust somewhere quieter. Paper. Dates. Records. The slow, patient language of money that does not care how charming you are or how nice your centerpiece looks. Helen had her tools. The lies. The public cuts. The careful work of making me a stranger in my own bloodline. I had mine. Documents. Process. Truth. I don't shout at numbers. I just read them out loud until everyone in the room has to hear what they say. That night, after I tucked a quilt around my grandfather on my couch and watched him fall asleep half-finished in the middle of a sentence, I sat down at my kitchen table. The one no one had come to. 8 cold play settings still circled me like a jury. I opened my laptop. Started a new spreadsheet. And began where I begin every case that matters. With one question. Grandpa had signed a durable power of attorney in March. 6 weeks after the fall. It named my mother as his agent. On its own, that meant nothing. Families do it every day. Sometimes with love. But a power of attorney in the wrong hands is a loaded weapon. Nebraska law is clear. The person holding it must act for the older person's benefit. Not their own. So I followed the money the way you follow tracks in fresh snow. One careful step at a time. And what I found did not look like care. It looked like a harvest. Starting in April, money began leaving Grandpa's accounts in steady, tidy amounts. $12,000 to Claire in May. Memo line, loan. $9,000 to Mason in June. Another loan. No repayment schedule. No signed note. No sign anybody planned to pay back a dime. A new car. A roof. Homework on a house that wasn't Grandpa's. And then I found the worst part. The account Arthur had set aside years ago for his own care. The one meant to keep him in his home with help as he aged. By fall, it had been drained to almost nothing. Then I found draft papers. A new will. Half finished. Sitting as an attachment in my mother's email printouts. It cut out the small gifts Grandpa had once planned for old friends and his church. Pushed nearly everything toward Claire and Mason. And there was a purchase agreement too. And signed. Dated. For the sale of Grandpa's house. Rose's house. They weren't just spending him down. They were dismantling him while he was still alive to watch. And they were doing it fast. Like people who had heard a clock start ticking. They had. They just didn't know yet that the clock was me. I read Rose's letter again that night. Slower this time. All the way through. Near the end, her handwriting tilted from tiredness. And she wrote about money. I put aside a little for her, she wrote. Not much. I clean houses and I save what I can. Daddy is holding it for me until she's grown, so she'll never have to feel like anyone's charity. Tell her it came from me. Tell her I was working. I stopped breathing. There it was. In my dead mother's own hand. A fund. Small. Honest. Built from housecleaning money. Saved so her daughter would never have to feel the exact thing they had spent my whole life making me feel. And tucked inside the letter was a second note. From Grandpa. Dated years ago. Rose's money for Eliza, plus what I've added, kept in the family account to be given when she's ready. I understood then exactly which account they had drained. Not just an old man's savings. My mother's last gift to me. The one thing she had left so I would never feel like a kindness. They had spent it on a car for Claire and a roof for Mason. That letter became the concrete thing in my mind after that. Heavier than any number. Helen had called me a kindness. The woman who actually gave birth to me had spent her short life trying to make sure I never had to be one. The difference between those two women was the whole story. I folded the letter. Smoothed it flat. Put it where I keep documents I will not lose. Then I picked up the phone and found a lawyer. I want to be clear about what I did not do. Because it matters. I did not hide a recorder under the Thanksgiving turkey. I did not bait my mother into saying something awful. That is theater. And theater was my family's gift. Not mine. I did the boring thing. The strong thing. I made an appointment. Her name was Linda Carver. Elder law attorney. Gray hair. Reading glasses pushed up on her head. A way of listening that made me feel, for once, like the sane person in the room. I laid everything out. Power of attorney. Transfers. Care account. My mother's fund inside it. Draft will. Possible house sale. Linda did not gasp. People in her line of work don't. She took notes and asked the questions that mattered. Then she said, carefully, under Nebraska law, what you're describing may be more than bad judgment. Misusing a power of attorney for personal gain can be a breach of duty. Depending on the records, it could support more than that. She did not promise me a win. Good lawyers don't. She gave me a path. We could ask the court for a formal accounting. We could try to suspend the power of attorney while a judge reviewed things. We could report suspected financial exploitation to Adult Protective Services. None of it was fast. None of it was flashy. All of it was real. It's a long road, Linda warned me. I looked at her and said, I've been walking longer ones since I was 2. They found out I was looking before I wanted them to. Of course they did. Banks confirm things. Tellers talk. Somebody mentioned to my mother that her daughter, the accountant, had been asking about statement histories. Helen called that evening. Her voice had lost all its holiday sugar. I hear you've been poking around your grandfather's accounts, she said. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stay out of family business. I held the phone away from my ear for a second and took one breath. He asked me to look, I said. Since when do you take his calls? She snapped. You couldn't even be bothered to set him a place at dinner. I almost laughed. She really thought that would work. Then she said the thing she always used when she wanted me small again. This is between his children. You were never really one of us, and you know it. That sentence would have broken me once. I would have apologized. Backed up. Gone quiet. Not anymore. I had a birth certificate in my drawer that said otherwise. And a letter from a woman who loved me before any of them decided not to. You're right, I said, calm as a closing entry. I was never one of you. I'm something you should have been a lot more careful about. Then I hung up first. For the first time in my life. If you've ever been told you weren't really family by the very people who needed you to believe it, I see you. Stay with me. Because after that, I went to work. For the next 2 weeks, I built a record. Grandpa gave written consent on one of his clear mornings, with Linda there to witness it. We requested full histories on every account. We moved through the right channels to revoke the power of attorney so no one could ever say I had snatched control in the dark. I built a timeline that grew until it felt like its own living thing. Date. Amount. Account. Recipient. Memo. My note. Every transfer sat in a row. Every theft dressed up as a loan. All lined up and impossible to charm away. My whole life, people treated my overcarefulness like a flaw. Too much. Too exact. Too serious. Can't you ever let anything go, Eliza? No. And this time, that saved him. I am the woman who keeps every receipt. I am the woman who reads the bottom line nobody else sees. Helen had counted on the family habit of looking away. She had not counted on the child they pushed to the edge becoming a professional at looking closely. By the end of those 2 weeks, I had a binder. Tabbed. Dated. Cross-referenced. The kind of binder I usually hand to grieving widows so they can finally sleep. Except this time, the estate being eaten belonged to a living man. And the next paper they wanted from him was the one that would sell Rose's house. I almost felt sorry for my mother. I want that on record. It would be easy to make her a cartoon villain. She wasn't. Buried in the old family papers, I found the dates. The winter I came to them, Helen had lost her third pregnancy in October. Late. The kind that has a name. The kind that leaves behind a tiny gown. Then in February, with that grief still raw, her husband's dead sister's baby was placed in her arms in a house where the heat got shut off twice that year. I found a note from her to Thomas. It said only, "I can't grieve mine while I'm feeding hers." For one moment, sitting on my floor with old papers around me, I understood her. I was a wound handed to a wounded woman before her own had closed. There was even a receipt from an all-night pharmacy from that first spring. Her name on it. Medicine for my fever. She had not started as a monster. She had started as someone drowning. And then I turned the page. And the sympathy died. Because understanding how someone begins cold does not excuse what they choose warm. By autumn, she knew exactly what that account was. She had Rose's letter. She had read it. And she spent that money anyway. A luxury SUV for the daughter she kept. You can be a victim and a thief in the same life. My mother proved that. I closed the file. Folded away the almost forgiveness. And I did not open it again. I gave Thomas a chance. He was my uncle after all. My last blood relative besides Grandpa, who had actually known Rose. Who had carried me out of a wrecked car when I was barely 2. I drove to his house on a gray Tuesday. Sat across from him at his kitchen table. I did not bring the binder. I brought the letter. I set it in front of him and watched his face fall when he recognized his sister's handwriting. "I know whose I am now," I said quietly. "I'm not here to ruin your life. I'm asking you to help me protect your father. Stand with me, Thomas. Most of this never has to leave the family." For one second, I thought he might. His hand moved toward the letter. His eyes filled. The boy who had loved his little sister flickered behind the tired old man he had become. Then he pushed the letter back toward me without touching it. "Dad's fine," he said. "Helen's taking good care of him. You always make a drama out of things, Eliza. Let it go. Let it go." The family motto. The words they had used to bury Rose. To keep me grateful. To ignore anything that made them uncomfortable. I picked up my mother's letter and stood. "Okay," I said. "I'll let you go." He didn't hear the difference. But I meant it. I was done asking permission from people who would never give it. From then on, I would ask only the court. Word moved fast after that. Families circling the wagons always move fast. Within a day, Claire had heard I was snooping. And Claire never believed in patience. She believed in speed. Always had. As a kid, she grabbed the biggest slice before anybody could measure. Now she pushed to rush the house sale through before anything stopped it. She leaned on a realtor friend. Pressed Grandpa for a signature on one of his foggy afternoons. She and my mother started clearing what smaller accounts they still could. That was the ugly part. The law moves slowly. A petition takes time. A hearing takes time. But a woman with a valid power of attorney and a checkbook can empty an account in one afternoon. The very thing that made my approach honest also made it slow. And they were running through the gap. I called Linda in something close to panic. She did not panic back. "We file for emergency relief," she said. "We ask the court to freeze the house sale and suspend the power of attorney now." So that is what we did. I did not drive to Claire's house and scream. I did not post records online. I sat with my lawyer until midnight building an emergency petition. Every claim nailed to a page. Every dollar tied to a date. They were fast. But fast people leave a trail. And I am very good at trails. We filed on a Thursday. I remember because all day I kept looking at my hands on the pen. Steady. My mother's hands. Rose's hands. Steady. When the clerk stamped the papers and made them real, we moved in 3 directions at once. Like setting 3 locks on a door you finally understand is unsafe. We reported suspected elder financial exploitation to Adult Protective Services. Binder attached. Every transfer laid out. We petitioned the court for a full accounting of everything done under that power of attorney since March. And we asked, on an emergency basis, to suspend Helen's authority and freeze the sale of the house until a judge could review what I had found. None of it was loud. No cameras. No showdown. Just paper entering a system built for the exact moment a family fails the person it was supposed to protect. Linda warned me again. Nothing guaranteed. The other side would talk. The wheels would turn slowly. I said I understood. Then 2 days later, the first will turned. The court issued a temporary order. The power of attorney was suspended pending review. The house sale was frozen. For the first time since the fall, Grandpa's money sat still. Untouchable. Because a judge in Douglas County had looked at what I filed and decided it deserved a closer look. I sat in my car outside the courthouse and did not feel triumphant. I felt older than triumph. Quieter. I felt like a daughter getting, 32 years late, to do one thing for her family that her family had never done for her. There was only one thing left undone. They didn't know yet. And Grandpa's 80th birthday was 9 days away. My mother had planned that birthday party like a coronation. Big spread at Grandpa's house. The good house. Rose's house. Relatives. Neighbors. Old church friends. Some of the same people they had been quietly cutting out. I knew exactly what the party was for. Optics. After the freeze order, after the lawyer letters, after APS, Helen needed to be seen as the devoted caregiver. The loving daughter-in-law. The woman throwing a beautiful party for the old man she adored. I was not invited. Of course I wasn't. Another table. Another missing chair. And they assumed I would do what I had always done. Stay home. Eat alone. Be grateful for whatever scraps of attention they threw my way later. But I was not that girl anymore. The pie had cooled. So had I. I was going to that party. I was going to walk through the front door of Rose's house the way her daughter had every right to. And I was bringing 2 things with me. A binder. And a lawyer. My mother had told me, we only set one good table this year. Fine. Then I would set the record straight at hers. In front of everyone. With the calm of a woman reading a balance sheet aloud. I spent the next 9 days getting ready. Not rehearsing speeches. Tabbing pages. Truth doesn't need a speech. It needs order. The night before the party, I sat at my table and assembled the binder one last time. Watched my own hands do the work. Steady. Sure. Rose's hands. I believed it now. Tab 1. Power of attorney. Tab 2. Transfers in order. Memo lines that said loan over money nobody meant to repay. Tab 3. The care account. And beside it, Rose's letter, so anyone reading would know whose savings had bought that SUV. Tab 4. The half-built will. Tab 5. The frozen house sale. And the court order beside it like a locked gate. When the binder was done, I did one more thing. The thing that surprised me most. I baked the spiced pear pie. Cardamom. Clove. Pears just past ripe. The recipe living in my hands the way it always had. Only now I knew the truth. It was not comfort borrowed from someone else. It was inheritance. Passed from mother to daughter through an old man who refused to let it die. I was not bringing that pie to make peace. I had no peace left to offer them. I was bringing it because I wanted something of Rose's on that table. Something warm beside all that cold paper. Her recipe. Her records. Her sweetness. Her proof. All walking in together in her daughter's hands. I slept 4 hours. Woke up calm. The morning of the party, the snow had stopped. Rose's house glowed when I pulled up. Every window lit. Cars lining the street. A paper banner over the porch that said 80 years young in my mother's careful hand. I sat for 1 minute in the car. The binder on the passenger seat. The pie warm beside it. Let myself feel the size of what I was about to do. Then I got out. Walked up the path. And let myself in through the front door. Because a daughter does not knock at her own family's house. The room stopped. Completely. Thomas saw me first and went pale. Mason froze with a beer halfway to his mouth. Claire's smile curled and died. And across the room were witnesses I had not even dared hope for. Edith from next door, who had known Rose as a girl. 2 of Grandpa's church friends. The very people the new draft will had quietly cut out. And near the bookshelf, in a sensible coat, holding a slim leather folder and a paper cup of coffee like she belonged there, stood Linda Carver. My lawyer. She had agreed that a public reckoning, witnessed and documented, was worth her Saturday. My mother came at me fast. Hostess' smile stretched tight over fury. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, low enough for the guests not to hear. "This is family only. You need to leave." I held my ground. "And the pie?" I did not raise my voice. I had promised myself I would not. Not once. And before I had to answer, a voice cut across the whole bright room. Thin. Cracked. Absolutely certain. Eliza stays. My grandfather had pushed himself up from his chair at the head of the room. One hand white on the armrest. The other pointing at the seat beside him. The fog was gone from his eyes. Some mornings he came all the way back. God had given him this one. "She stays," he said again. "And the rest of you are going to sit down and listen to what she found." My mother let out that bright little laugh she used when she was trying to cover panic. "Arthur, you're tired. You're confused. This is your party." "I am 80 years old," he said, and clearer than I'd been in months. "And I am asking my granddaughter to tell the truth in my own house for once." Granddaughter. The word hit the room like a dropped dish. I saw Edith's hand fly to her mouth. I saw Thomas close his eyes. I walked to the table. The long dining table set with my mother's good china. The family table where I had never once sat as an equal. I set the binder down on it. Not slammed. Set. Like something heavy carried a long way. Then I placed the pie beside it. Warm spice rose into the cold room. "Most of you don't know who I am," I said. "So let me start there. Because it matters to everything else." My voice was level. Maybe even gentle. I have spent my career talking to rooms full of grieving people about money. I have learned something. The calmer you are, the harder people have to listen. So I stayed calm. I was the calmest person in that house. "My mother was Rose Bennett," I said. "I am not the kindness this family took in. I am the daughter they hid." Nobody moved. In the last 3 weeks, with my grandfather's permission, I had been reviewing what was done to his finances after his fall. I opened the binder to tab 1. On March 11th, 6 weeks after the fall, Arthur Bennett signed a durable power of attorney naming Helen Bennett his agent. The law says that power could only be used for his benefit. I turned the page. In May, $12,000 went to Claire Bennett. Memo line, loan. There is no loan agreement. Another page. In June, $9,000 went to Mason Bennett. Also marked loan. Also no agreement. No payment plan. No evidence of repayment. Claire's face went from white to red. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," I said. Not louder. Just steadier. Then I turned another page. "This is the account Grandpa set aside for his own care so he could stay in this house with help as he aged. In April, it held $140,000. By November, it held $900. I let that number sit in the room. 900. From 140,000. The right number, said quietly, hits harder than any scream. It paid for a car, I said. A roof. A kitchen that is not in this house. Now my mother was moving toward me. Her hostess mask gone. Her real face showing. How dare you, she snapped. Then louder. How dare you come into this house and after everything we gave you, you ungrateful little. She was shouting now. In front of Edith. In front of the church friends. In front of every person she had invited to admire her. And I was not. That mattered. That was the turn. She got louder. I stayed still. And with every level her voice climbed, the room leaned farther from her and closer to me. Because a screaming woman and a calm woman reading bank records do not look equal. They look like the guilty and the prepared. There's more, I said when she ran out of air. Then I looked straight at her. You keep using a word for me. I'd like to return it. Say what you came to say, she snapped. Then get out of my house. It isn't your house, I said. It's his. It was Rose's. And you tried to sell it out from under him. Her chin lifted. She reached for the one weapon that had worked on me for 32 years. You will always be exactly what you've always been, she said. You were a kindness, Eliza. Not a daughter. The whole room held its breath. Once, those words would have dropped me straight through the floor. Now I reached into the binder, pulled out one page, and laid it face up on the family china. The birth certificate. State seal. Typed letters. My mother was Rose Bennett, I said. Her name is right there on the line. And tonight, the only fact that matters is this. I am the single person in this room who actually protected your father. Then I turned from my mother to the guests. Because truth deserves witnesses. And she had kindly gathered them for me.